Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Abra Kennedy, a session hairstylist. Thanks for coming on the show, Abra.
Thank you for having me, Taisha.
Well, to get started, let's talk about hair. You originally wanted to be a makeup artist. So what happened and how did you end up in hair?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll try to make a long story short. Basically, when I was in school, leading up to A levels in the art class, we had something where we were painting faces, and one of those courses, and we had to paint it on the paper, and then we had to bring what we painted on the paper onto the face. And then I thought, great, that's what I want to do. I always knew that I wanted to work something creative and that I wanted to work something with people. And then I thought, where can I paint faces? In the opera. So I thought, great, makeup artist in the opera it is then. So I was 17, I think, at that time. And then I decided that this is what I wanted to do, or at least to start with. And then I made some research into, because I'm from Germany. So then in Germany, to become a makeup artist in the opera, you have to be either a hairdresser or you have to become a beauty technician first. So then I thought, no way I'm squeezing pimples. No way I'm touching anyone's feet but mine. So no beauty technician, hairdresser. I was like, yeah, I don't think I would like that. I don't want to even cut anyone's hair. And people always assume hairdressers are stupid. So I don't want to be one of those people. But then I thought about it more and I thought actually hairdressing might be quite interesting. So I made some more research and then I just found myself an apprenticeship and that's what I did. And then I fell in love with doing hair. And I decided that I no longer wanted to work in the opera, because then I had done some more research on that. And even though I had already started the process, becoming a hairdresser and all of that, but I knew what it meant to have a 40-hour week. And I knew what it would mean for me socially and just for lifestyle as well if I would have that 40-hour week with shifted hours, because obviously in the opera you don't work from 9 to 6 or from 10 to 8. You work from, I don't know, you start 1 or 2 and then you finish when the show is finished, but then you're not finished because then you have to reset stuff. So I thought, well, I don't think that this is working out for me. And I had done some theatre projects, so I thought actually I met some people that done opera and theatre, and I just couldn't see myself there in Germany doing that. So stayed a hairdresser, and then met a lot of other people along the way doing hairdressing, talked to a lot of people. I'd always used the hairdressing as my private research. I would always ask clients, what do you do? Would you do it again if you could choose your career again? And most people said no. And I felt that was very interesting. So that made me think more, what do I want to do with my life? I don't know, but I kind of stuck to hairdressing. On and off though, on and off.
So before we jump into like the questions that I had planned, I actually just wondering, what drew you to the opera? Like, you're the first person I've spoke to that kind of thought about the opera. So I'm just curious in general.
Why?
When did you see the opera?
Well, it probably, I would have to go too much into depth in the way that how I grew up.
Okay, cool.
Basically, there was a time, so I'm a single child, and my mum had put me into a project where I could travel, and I ended up traveling to a family in Switzerland, and that from a very young age. So I went there about 2-3 times a year when I was a child, just to get out of the situation, and my mum then could focus on the things that she had to do and stuff like that. So from a very young age, I ended up with this family, and this family was very much opera involved. So that they had a child, she was a couple of years older than me, and she loved the opera.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I got to know about Mozart and Beethoven, and
I love that.
And I even started playing the piano and playing the violin, and I don't know, stuff like that. So I always kind of knew about opera. I always knew that opera was there. I watched what is that called in English? The Zauberflöte in German.
Okay.
You know, the thing with the flute.
Mm-hmm.
What is that opera called in English? Damn, how do I not know that? Anyway.
I can admit I've actually never watched the opera or
You
seen
didn't?
opera, so
Wow.
I know
So,
what it is, but I've never been to an opera show or like engaged with
okay.
it. But I probably need to now that I spoke to you.
It's great. There is quite some interesting operas. I mean, looking at it
Okay.
from my perspective now, obviously some of the plays are quite problematic considering the time that they were written. Also, so
Mm-hmm.
that if people like looking like me or like my dad or my dad's family appear, then that is rather
Yeah.
problematic. But obviously, at the
That's how you
time,
got that's
I
that's how
didn't
you
know
got into opera.
that's how
Okay,
I got into
cool.
opera. So that's how I got to know about opera, and I always like loved classical music for that reason as well. So yeah, so kind
Okay.
of I thought that was what I wanted to do. But then yeah, as the further I went into hairdressing and the more people I've met, the more I understood
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be kind of in that world. I'd rather
Okay.
go there every now and then, which to be honest hasn't happened in years, and enjoy
Okay.
a nice piece. But
Okay, cool. So you go into opera, you're doing hair. What did you fall in love with about hair? Like, what was it about doing hair that made it stick for you?
I think what it made it stick for me was that the salon that I worked at the time in Germany, they always did other stuff out of the salon. So they did events and stuff like that. And I always liked about the events that you can just create something that has nothing to do with the person walking down the road. And I think, which is one of the reasons how I ended up then in session, because in session work, it's not necessarily about what the person needs in their day-to-day life. When they come to the hairdresser, they want a certain haircut that works for their lifestyle, or a certain hair color that fulfills their wishes for whatever they want to look like in the moment of their life, or so whatever. So yeah, and I think that's the fantasy aspect is something that really drew me, and that is something that you still can do on a person, and you kind of, it's not also that you alone are the creator of something. I mean, kind of in the moment that I'm on the head, that's me, but it's also, different ideas create then whatever I come up with. So photographer comes up with an idea, or creative director comes up with an idea. Photographer brings in their vision of how they want to shoot a certain look of a shoot. And then, the model will be cast according to that. Then that brings a different idea to it, depending on what type of model you have. Do you have a blonde person? Do you have a person, a black person with an afro? Do you have a person with braids? Do you have, an Asian person or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's so many different aspects that create the final image, and then obviously the clothes, the styling, and the makeup as well. So it's, yeah, and I do love working together with makeup artists. I always love looking what they're coming up with, and I feel always inspired by something but I don't know, I think it's kind of, I can't even tell you. I kind
Yeah,
of like touching
yeah,
hair
you
and
sound like you just fell in love with it, and
playing
I'm just
around with it.
curious.
Yeah,
But it's interesting you talk about the transformation. I was with some friends last night, and I was saying, like, even though I'm not the best at doing hair, that's why I spend all my money at going to hairstylists. Is there is something transformative about the feeling of getting your hair done, and you'll
yeah,
never be able to measure it, but we all know what it feels like, and so you are able to give that to people, and then when you do it like on set, it's like you said, all those pieces come together, which really like amplify your part that you've contributed.
yeah,
Um,
I guess so.
so like you've had an extensive career. What is something you wish you knew earlier when you were getting into hair?
That's a good question. I actually wanted to think about that more. I think I think I w- yeah, that's a very good question. I think there's multiple things. Um, One of the things is, I mean, you always hear like, okay, hairdressers, it's putting a lot of restraint on your body and stuff like that. But you don't know, when you work in a salon, for instance, you don't know how much it can be draining trying to make people happy with whatever they come to you. So basically, you would think it's only about the hair, but then you will find out often, not always, but quite sometimes, when a client is happy, they come back. Then you would assume they will come back, and then they will come back over a long period of time. So you get to know people very, very, very closely. And I think when it comes to being a hairdresser in a salon, I think one of the things, how to manage to keep kind of a professional distance, because then you would assume sometimes the clients are your friends, or you are their friend, and therefore you tell them maybe something about you at some point. I'm not speaking like after a second time they sit in your chair. I'm speaking about maybe 10 years in or something, because, you know, even nowadays I don't do that one-to-one thing anymore. But sometimes when I go back to Germany, there's still some people that I might occasionally cut their hair that I know from the time when I was working in a salon or something. And this is like, some of them I know maybe 18 years. And now I'm all right with that, you know, and I know what I can say or what I want to say. I'm able to, in some kind of way, keep my distance if I want to, and if I don't want to, it's fine. But like, I think as a younger person, I feel, you know, understanding that this is kind of a job still, and, you know, and that it can be very draining if you try to give your everything to every single person. This is kind of something that I was trained in to do, but how do you still keep your distance while giving everything, and while giving them their full attention, and make them feel like they're the only person in the world that, you know, you are trying to make them happy with their hair, but also like listening to whatever else they have to tell you. So yeah, trying to find you know, what's that called? Not a wall, but like kind of
boundary, keeping some
boundary.
kind of boundary.
Yeah, keeping
Okay.
boundaries. Yeah, exactly. That's for sure. So that's one thing. And then I guess also how I think if I had understood what it was necessary to get into session work, and how to do that in a more efficient way, that would have been helpful. But I guess also in Germany, everything works out a bit different than it works in the UK. So here, if you're a hairdresser, you can stay a hairdresser. In Germany, you have to kind of learn how to do makeup in order to get like
Oh, wow.
into the freelance world.
Okay.
So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so
Okay.
there was a time where I kind of also even had to do that. But then I
Oh,
moved to
wow.
the UK and decided that I'm never going to touch makeup.
So on the note of skills, what I've loved about kind of speaking to you today, and like everyone that's come on this series to talk about hairstyling specifically, is you can all do all hair textures, right? And people often assume if you can do textured hair, that's all you do. Can
Yeah.
you talk a bit more about how it's benefited you to be able to do all textures, and why it's important if you have the opportunity to learn all textures?
Also, I think it is very important to be able to work with different hair textures, alone for the fact that you know what language to use also when working with different hair textures. So, example, just yesterday, opened up my Instagram, classic. You see like the suggestions of posts, and I see this hairdresser who has a really big following, who is a British hairdresser who moved to the US a couple of years ago. And it was interesting because I used to assist him actually when I first moved to the UK, and he was not being nice. However, that's a whole different story. It was a terrible experience, to be honest. But then yesterday I see him. I don't follow him, but I see him because he's got a big following. One of the suggested posts, doing some advertising for a particular product that is helping straight blow drying curls out, for instance. And apparently that product also is good for, you know, maintaining the straight texture. So I got so annoyed because what he said is, let me try and get this together. He said basically, you know, to blow dry extremely curly and extremely dry hair, this is the product that sorted out all out. Extremely curly, extremely dry in one sentence. Excuse me. You're a professional hairdresser that has multiple years, if not even at least over a decade of experience with hair. You've done so many celebrities. You sit there on your Instagram making an advertising video for a product. That product is actually quite good, to be honest, but using a language like that is absolutely unacceptable for me, And the reason why he does that is because he's not really experienced in working with different hair textures that much. Had he had more experience with curly hair, and particularly he's white. In this video, there's a mixed race girl, or maybe not mixed race, but light skin, maybe like more or less like my complexion, whatever. With this curly hair, and she had beautiful hair. Actually, her hair was beautiful, and it did not look extremely dry. It did, like, with a professional eye, I could see her hair is actually quite well maintained. Had he had more experience working with people that look like me, he wouldn't use that type of language. So I feel it is really important to educate yourself about different textures and what working with that comes with, if that makes any sense.
That makes absolute sense. Because you do work with all hair types, I'm always intrigued because we're all individuals, right? And some things that work for my hair won't work for your hair.
Yeah.
Is there anything when it comes to styling or treating hair that applies to all hair types?
Heat protection, potentially.
Okay, I'm just curious. I'm super curious because everyone's like, well, my hair's different. And I'm like, there has to be something that we all should probably be doing.
I think everyone benefits from using heat protection on hair when using a lot of heat. So that is something that you can say safely across the board. That is quite similar with all hair types. But I do think also it depends on what you're doing. And it depends on who you work on. If you work on a person that never has heat on their hair because they're not a model, then you might get away with not using it because it's a once in a while experience for their hair. But someone that is a model always has heat on their hair, a lot of heat on their hair, a lot of things done to their hair, a lot of product in their hair. So I guess like moisturizing treatments is good for everyone. Using heat protection is good for everyone. Like trying to get to where you want to get in the least invasive way is good for everyone. Having said that, people who know me know I love products. The more the better. Because very often what I do with hair has so nothing to do with the day-to-day that I need the support of a product that makes the hair stiff. Or sometimes even a bit crunchy. It looks great. It doesn't feel necessarily that nice, but it looks great, so I get the result that I want. But yeah. So obviously I'm trying to get the least of it. Yeah. So heat protection is one of those things that you could say, yeah. And also force. That's maybe even more important. Because you see hairdressers, I've done a lot of fashion weeks. I've worked in a lot of fashion weeks. So basically assisted all the big, I always like to call them the big guns. I don't know why I do that. The big hairdressers, the biggest hairdressers of the industry that you would know worldwide. So I've done New York, Paris, Milan, London, obviously. And I've worked with quite a lot of these really big hairdressers. And so you have like a lot of big hair teams there. I'm speaking like 30 people that only do hair backstage. And then you would sometimes or quite often see people that are so rough with their hair. They're so rough. You don't need to be rough. You don't need to be rough. Okay. You can get to a result without ripping the whole head apart. And that accounts for literally all hair textures. And that's probably almost even, if not even as important, is even more important. I don't know if that sentence makes sense. If it's not,
that makes sense. That makes sense. I'll stop pulling at my hair.
As important, if not even more important.
Okay, cool. So heat protection and force.
Force.
So you've worked multiple fashion weeks.
Yeah.
What was it like for you starting out, going into that as an experience? Because I can imagine it was hectic. And how have you seen the industry evolve when it comes to your experience as a hairstylist working at Fashion Week?
So what was it like? So basically how I did start that was, Berlin has a fashion week, but it's nowhere near, and you can't compare that to anything that happens on the international market. I'm really sorry to say, but it is just what the truth. And that solely has something to do with the types of brands that are local to Germany. So, we have Hugo Boss, who does like big, massive shows. So sometimes Hugo Boss used to show in Germany. That's how I actually noticed the difference between hairdressers that come from abroad and hairdressers that are on the ground in Germany. So I always I've done that a couple of times. However, long story short, I ended up in London, started out doing Fashion Week in London, and I thought my eyes are falling out. My eyes were like that the whole time. I'm like, what is going on? First of all, and but I have to put that into context, because obviously I grew up in Germany. So Germany even Berlin is quite rather diverse. One of the more diverse places in Germany. Is not as diverse, nowhere compared to London. And, people that grew up here would probably even argue how diverse London is. But like for me, as a German mixed race Black person coming to London, I was like, the diversity was amazing. I was like, there's people from all colors, heights, whatever, and shapes and everything. And what they do backstage, I was just amazed. So I was like, this is what I need to do. That I need to get as much input as I can get. So then London was all right, because I had a contact from the time that I was still living in Berlin to a smaller agency here. And then I started trying to get assisting into the big agencies. And that was months and months of sending emails, sending them my website, sending them my portfolio, sending constant emails saying, hi, I'm Abra, I'm a hair assistant, and blah, blah, blah. I want to work with so-and-so that you have on your board, whatever. And months of no replies, months of, like, literally I was writing emails into a void. And then eventually one day, once someone came back from a massive agency, they've got like really, really big hairdressers there. And the woman said, are you in Milan next week? And I said, no, I'm not, but I can be if there's work. No reply ever. And then I understood, and then I thought about it, and I thought, oh, maybe that wasn't the way to go. Maybe I have to be local, have to be making myself local and say, yes, I'm there, to be even considered. So that's something that I understood from that. So then the next season, I made sure that I was in Milan, that I was in Paris. So I started with those two cities, and that I would send emails and say, I am going to be there. Can I work with so-and-so? Can I get on so-and-so's team? So then eventually I got a lot of options, and a couple of them got confirmed. I was so happy. I was terrified as well. And then that was 2015. After sending probably a good 6 months of emails. And that was summer 2015. Yeah. So the first time I did Fashion Week was in 2014. So it took me like that long to get more into the international field, like as an outside of London even. So then I did get like, I think 3 shows in Milan and 3 shows in Paris. I had many more options, but most of those were released because no one knew me. No one knew, who is this chick? Like, what can she even do? And then you get there and you think you will be able to help someone. And sometimes you weren't even allowed to hold pins for someone because like they don't know your face. They don't care if you're there or if you're not there. And then you just like stand there, but then you're not even allowed to stand there because you'll be shouted at. So that was, some people that know the industry will even know who I talk about or whose team I talk about when I tell these stories. But however, I kept pushing and I kept traveling after all these people. And then I kept traveling to New York and sending more emails. And the more I got onto some shows, then I could say, oh, I've worked with so-and-so and so-and-so already. So then other teams would consider me. And then obviously I would get confirmed at some point, and then I would get more confirmation. And then I ended up being really, really busy. So after maybe like another season or 2, I got really, really busy. And then, so it was how it's starting out for me. But I needed money and I needed help from other people. So I stayed on sofas. I asked everyone that I knew, do you know someone in Paris that I can stay with? Do you know someone in Milan? So I stayed on people's sofas from people's friends of friends of friends, because I could not afford living in London, traveling there, paying for my travel, plus paying a hotel or an Airbnb. I had no money because I was living in London.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about, because fashion and entertainment, such glamorous industries. If you don't work in it from the outside, it's wow. It's just like, wow, what a world to be part of. Very glamorous.
Yeah.
When I think about fashion, I think about models, and I've watched enough documentaries where they'll say like, hey, I had to go to these many like shoots and, you know, like bookings and try to get booked and stuff like that. And it looks quite intense, right?
Yeah.
How does it work for you as a hairstylist? What's the money like in terms of like, what should people expect if they're trying to break through? Because I know in fashion, and if you want to go work in fashion, lots of interns, it's like you need to work for free, or at most they might cover lunch. I'm not sure for sure. It might vary from different, but in general, that's the understanding of the industry.
So basically, there also, I need to explain also one thing, that a lot of things have changed after 2020.
Mm-hmm. Oh, luckily. Okay.
So nowadays, when you're starting out, and okay, maybe I'll start with how it was before. So before, you would come in as an assistant. So let's say you assisted someone. When you do an editorial shoot, even though you, let's say, a big hairdresser, you don't get paid a lot of money. So you really don't get paid a lot. You don't get paid very, very little. Even for high-end magazines, you don't get paid a proper daily fee. You get like a token fee.
Okay.
Yeah. So that covers your travel, that covers your lunch, you know. You get some money, but it's not much. And then if you get an assistant because you need help, then it depends on you whether you will pay them out of your pocket. If the magazine says, let's say, we don't have budget for an assistant, or if they are aware that you really need someone to help you in order to be more efficient on what they want from you in the day, then they might cover their token fee. So then they get paid a little tiny fee. So that will cover their travel, their lunch, whatever. But lunch is most of the time provided anyways on shoots. So then, you know, but then if you as an artist not being prepared to fight for that, you pay them out of your own pocket, and then it's just it's your decision how much you want to give them. So some people get paid 50 quid. Some people might get paid 75 quid, which is a rather standard assistant editorial fee. But then, you know, then you might get them on, then, you know, I did so, and then let's start this again. That definitely has to go.
That's a good pre-pandemic, you were going to say.
So basically, nowadays, most of the times, assistant will get paid for editorials as well. I would assume. So at least if I get someone in to help me for an editorial, even if I don't get any money, I pay them something, because why would they have to travel and pay for their travel to get somewhere to help me on a job that benefits me and my portfolio, where they can say, oh, they've worked with Abra Kennedy. Okay, but like, I'm not a big name in the industry as such, you know, like I'm maybe somewhat a little bit known in a lower field, maybe, you know, but like I'm not like one of those big people that do like New York Fashion Week and have like a team of 30 people or something. So that I don't even know how much it would help them to tell other people, oh, I've worked with her. You know what? You know, if that makes sense. So if I was really massive and they would come to work for free for me, then at least they could use my name as a leverage to get into someone else's team, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, which is what I did. Okay. And so pre-lockdown, and which is what happened to me, was I worked on editorials all the time for free. All the time. So a lot. And but then that's how I got some experience with certain things. And also that made me understand that, you know, some people pay you actually to at least something to help, for you to come to help them. And other people don't. And some people appreciate you, even though they can't pay you, they at least forward you for some job, something, you know, or they help you to get into someone else's team. Funny enough, I never really had that kind of help. It was really weird because like, I know there was this one hairdresser that did my first initial introduction into London Fashion Week and stuff. And at some point, maybe like 2-3 years later that I was already here, she said, oh, you know, I helped so-and-so to get into one of her other assistants into so-and-so's team, big hairdresser, I dreamed of working with him, and I've worked with him a couple of times at a time, but not much because I did not have an introduction. So I had to fight my way into that, and hopefully they book me again. So they see me again. So then, they see how I work, and then eventually they might get me. And he had one of the really biggest shows in Paris at the time.
Wow.
And and she then said, and have you worked with him yet and stuff? And I said, yeah, a couple of times now. I've tried really hard. It was quite difficult to get there. And she's like, oh, have I never passed your contact on? I said, no. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I've never done that for you. And I thought, well, great. It's done now. I've done it myself. It took me so much longer because I did not have that initial introduction. So, even to be an assistant on big shows, you sometimes need that introduction.
Okay.
And at the time that I started doing it, even for Fashion Week, you need some money in your background. You need either to be able to live quite cheap in London, which is almost impossible, or you live, unless you live with family or you have someone providing for you in some kind of way to be able to afford going there. Or some people have a full-time job and then they take time off to go to Fashion Week and work on the big teams. So they can afford then paying the travel, paying the, If you then are lucky to get into someone's core team, that means then they will pay you to come out with them. They will pay you food, and they will pay your travel, and they will pay your accommodation as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's helpful. That's helpful to know. So it's like kind of things are getting a little bit better, but essentially there is probably a period where people should prepare for like, hey, there might be a gap in your money, and you maybe if you can save before you try to enter this world a little bit, it could help you.
Absolutely helpful. I am going to say this though, if you're like, let's say nowadays, post lockdown and everything, and not only post 2020, if you're a specialist and you're, let's say, a really talented braider, it's much easier for you to get into a team like that as if you just do everything. Like a lot of people do everything or a lot of things, but then they don't do that. And then that's a bit more difficult because like, how are they going to know where to put you? Because there's so many people they can pick from. But if you're a specialist, there's not that many specialists. So that is definitely something that is helpful.
Okay, cool. So let's just talk a little bit about you. Extensive career. What have been some highlights for you?
Yeah. So 2 highlights. One happened last year that I was suggested for a shoot with Naomi Campbell, and it was a cover shoot for a really big magazine. And I kind of thought that's not true. But I got chosen from the 2 people that they had suggested for that. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So that was quite a highlight because obviously she's an icon. Everyone knows who she is. Literally everyone. People even that don't do fashion or have nothing to do with fashion, who know who Naomi Campbell is. For me as a hairdresser, like having seen her on the magazines, on covers, and knowing like what kind of people have done her hair, like the people that I assisted have done her hair, and all of a sudden I'm requested for to do her hair. To me, it was actually insane and unbelievable. So that happened, and I kept saying I can't actually really believe it's true. And even after I went home after the shoot, I thought I can't even believe that this really happened. It was like, is that even real? And then the cover comes out, and I still sit there with the magazine in my hand, and I'm like, is that even real?
So let's talk about the future. What are you excited about for the future of hairstyling, and what are you excited about for the future of you?
That's a question that I thought about when I got sent it, and I couldn't answer that. I'm not sure if I can answer it now. I think if I eventually can help people that are starting out in the industry, something that is a thought that excites me sometimes. And I think, I don't know, because I think I'm at the point in my career where a lot of things could happen still. So this thing with Naomi was big, and it happened, and it happened to me, and it happened to, little Abra that could never thought she could be in that space. And I think there's so much more that still can happen, and so many people that I still would love to work with, and, creatively exploring different things and stuff. So yeah, it's a bit, I think, and, potentially I might sign with someone, but that's still up in the air. And, but I'm thinking about it, if that could be something that, could elevate where I'm headed. Because I actually don't really exactly know where I'm headed, like where I see myself in 10 years. And I think I'm at the point right now where I'm still really figuring out where I want to go. I actually have to, I'm actually working on a plan, because I had a plan 10 years ago. I had a plan 5 years ago, and most of these things really happen. So I'm at a point where I kind of actually really need to sit down and have a think of where do I want to go. And but I think from what I could see, what was happening from making a plan of what I overall wanted, that's worked out so well that I would think just going on the direction that I was going, or that I am going. I don't know.
Following follow the new plan that you're going to make, because you've delivered on the first plan, which is it's a good place to be.
Even though doing someone's hair like Naomi Campbell wasn't on the plan, I never had like something like specific like that,
It just happened. So you said obviously you want to maybe in the future be able to help aspiring session stylists. Where can people find you if they want to reach out or they want to follow your work?
Yeah, so to follow my work, you can go onto my Instagram, which is just Abra Kennedy. I don't know what picture I have there at the minute, but so there should be a picture of myself as well. So this is me. So yeah, that's my Instagram, and then I have a website that has also my email address, but I think my email address is also on my Instagram. So I mainly use those two platforms. I don't have a YouTube channel. Big flaw apparently these days. But maybe that's something to do in the future.
Well, this will be on YouTube, so it will be a little start for you. Not that you need it.
Then follow my new YouTube channel that has basically 0 followers, and make them go up.
Everyone's got to start somewhere. It has been lovely speaking to you.
Thank you.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you for being very open and honest. And
Thank you.
I think everyone that's watching this or going to watch it is going to really enjoy it.
Thank you. I hope so. Feedback welcome. And yeah, of course, if there's any more questions, I'm happy for people to reach out.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Taisha, for having me. Big pleasure. Bye.
How did you find it?